How's it going, everyone? It's Rowan here. In this video, I'm going to give you a rundown on the Radiants, the defenders of Roshar against the voidbringers. I will discuss everything we know about them so far, their history, makeup, and abilities. I will also cover each order, briefly outlining their abilities and surges. I hope to explain numerous aspects about the Cosmere, because I just find Brandon Sanderson's universe so fascinating, and of course, I wish to share these insights with you. Just as a forewarning though, this video will contain some spoilers, though I'll mostly keep it as spoiler-free as possible. With that being said, let's dive straight in. The Knights Radiant are an ancient order of surgebinders that held back the forces of the voidbringers during the Desolations. Created by the Herald Roshar, they roamed the world during the era of the Silver Kingdom of Alethela, though possibly existing before and after its creation as well. With their headquarters in the holy tower of Urithiru, they were a force like no other, second only to the Heralds. They were created when ancient Spren, during the early stage of the Heraldic epochs, imitated the Heralds and bestowed similar powers to human warriors, granting them surgebinding and access to shardplate and shardblades. It is possible that this act wasn't a conscious effort of imitation on the part of the Spren, but rather the idea of being like a herald taking form within the Spren. And since they are a representation of human thought of ideas, humans brought this idea to life. The Radiants existed at their height during the Heraldic epochs, the time before the Recreants, and much before the modern era. But not much is known about them. From Dalinar's visions, we can determine quite a bit of information from this era. With armor that glowed a gentle light, working dynamically with the wearer, allowing them to remove parts of their armor without physically taking them off, they bore the glowing glyphs of the double eye, with 8 circles interlinking with 2 at the center. The Radiants are not described as having luminous eyes, not like a light eyes, but eyes that actually shone. Unlike the gender divisions within Alethela, the ranks of the Radiants were filled by both men and women. According to Yasna, the ratio of female to males within Radiants were close to 50-50. The orders of Radiants had different organizational structures, with some orders preferring to work alone and others working within hierarchies and teams. The Windrunners worked in that manner, preferring to take on tasks in teams alongside other Windrunners and Squires. The Radiants are exceptionally powerful, through use of shardblades, capable of cutting clean through stone and other hard objects, and almost instantly killing human enemies, causing their eyes to smoke and burn if struck at the spine or neck. Shardplate can withstand a great deal of punishment too, able to block most ordinary weapons, as well as heavy attacks from great shells, massive beasts who all but the most well-equipped shardbearers could defeat. On top of this, Radiants have the ability to heal their wounds using Stormlight. Radiants had to be this powerful. They were required to fight and die during the Desolations to defend humanity. The Desolations were extremely destructive events whenever they occurred. The destruction was so great, in fact, that each time society essentially devolved into almost a prehistoric state, knocked so far down that the survivors essentially had to start from scratch. To combat a threat that could destroy even the Heralds, the Radiants sported all sorts of powers and abilities, the extent to which is not fully known as of yet. Radiants swear to the immortal words, which are the oaths that underlie their connection to the Spren who they have been bonded with. These ideals differ between the orders, but the first ideal is the same for all. When the Radiant speaks the ideals with conviction, they strengthen their bond with their Spren and are able to access greater powers as a result. For example, by progressing through the ideals, the Radiant will gain access to shardblades and shardplate, though the exact ideal where these abilities are granted differs between different orders. Furthermore, while most Radiants will be provided with their surgebinding, The Order of the Skybreakers are not able to access the Surge of Division unless they advance sufficiently enough through their ideals. It is not easy to learn the further ideals, at least in the case with Windrunners. However, in the case of Kaladin, Sol made sure not to tell him what the rest of the ideals were, saying that he will know the words to say when they come. The immortal words are powerful, but they pose great risks for the Spren. If a Radiant breaks their oaths, their Spren will die, becoming a Deadeye. The Radiants were divided into 10 orders, with each order having access to their own surges, albeit with some overlaps. Not every order has been fully fleshed out in the story so far, but nonetheless we can eke out a few details of the ones we know. With Honor Spren, Windrunners were able to take to the skies and make use of surges of adhesion and gravitation, colloquially known as the 3 lashings. Their surges work together in such a way as to allow them to run up walls, fly, cause objects to move opposite to gravity, or even cause them to attract other objects. Among the Knights Radiant, Windrunners were among the most versatile and the most dangerous. While Windrunners made good scouts and surveyors in combat, whatever a Windrunner could touch, they could lash, and as long as they had sufficient Stormlight, they could maneuver around their foes or cause them to stick to walls or other objects using their lashings. They could evade attacks or cause objects to become attracted to an enemy. In this sense, the tactical advantages that the 3 lashings provided were limited only to the skill and creativity of the specific Windrunner. The Dustbringers and their Ashspren, who through the use of the surges of division and abrasion could smolder rock itself, and hence were renowned for being particularly destructive. However, many Dustbringers are not fond of this moniker because their Spren like to take things apart to understand how they work. Furthermore, their surge of division can only be used when greater ideals are ascertained, which is a rare limitation among Radiants. But not all Knight Radiants were made for battle or destruction. Some Radiants took up administrative or support roles, such as Truth Watchers and their Mist Spren were able to access the surges of progression and illumination, allowing them to heal. In one of Dalinar's visions, he fights alongside a number of Radiants. One of them, who could be a Truth Watcher, completely heals a severed arm, regrowing the limb. Lightweavers were another form of support-oriented Radiants. Using illusions and spiritual connections with objects, they could soulcast without the use of a soulcaster. But this did not mean that supporting Radiants could not hold their own in battle, because all Radiants ultimately could use a shardblade and make use of shardplate, provided they advanced far enough in their oaths. Edgedancers, described as elegant and beautiful, bonded with cultivation Spren, and were able to access the surges of abrasion and progression. The surge of abrasion allowed them to ignore friction, essentially giving them the ability to cover huge distances with their speedy and graceful movements. Naturally, this meant that they were nimble and difficult to contain. The surge of progression also allowed them to heal wounds. In these respects, accounts spoke of Edgedancers being adept at moving civilians or wounded to safety, while other more combat-oriented Radiants drew attention. But despite this, to underestimate an Edgedancer in battle would be a grave mistake, because their graceful movements made them fearsome in combat in their own right. Elsecallers, who bond with Spren, make use of the surges of transformation and transportation. Like Lightweavers, their surge of transformation allows them to soulcast without the use of a soulcaster. Elsecallers are also able to enter Shadesmar, and during the Heraldic epochs served as the primary emissaries on behalf of the real world within Shadesmar. Described as capricious and unreliable, the Wolf Shapers, bonded with Lightspren, made use of the surges of transportation and cohesion. Transportation allowed Wolf Shapers to Elsecall, meaning they could enter Shadesmar at will by creating miniature perpendicularities, albeit this was not their primary purpose. Whereas the surge of cohesion allowed them to stone shape, meaning they could change the physical attributes of physical objects, changing solids to liquids, for example. While powerful, stone shapers are not able to change organic objects or objects that are invested. The Stonewards, through their peak Spren, also make use of the surge of cohesion, but also have access to the surge of tension, allowing them to change the stiffness of an object. Stonewards are hence able to strengthen objects, but this ability also requires the object to not be invested. The Order of Skybreakers, using the surges of gravitation and division. Like the Windrunners, they are able to change the gravitational direction of themselves or that of other objects, but they are also able to use division, which allows them to destroy or degrade objects around them. This surge, while making them exceptionally powerful, only becomes available to them after they advance past the third ideal, so in these respects it had similar requirements as Dustbringers. What makes this surge exceptionally powerful, however, is that unlike the surges of tension and cohesion, division can be used on organic objects. Lastly, the Order of the Bondsmiths, who solely bond with unique Spren, such as the Stormfather, the Nightmother, and the Sibling. Bondsmiths are able to use the surges of tension and adhesion, though their uses of these surges differ from how they are in the way. Though their uses of these surges differ from the way Stonewards would use tension or Windrunners would use adhesion. They are also unique from one another, since the specific vector of light a Bondsmith uses depends on the Spren they are bonded to. They are also capable of opening up perpendicularities. It is possible for Bondsmiths to bond with other great Spren, such as perhaps Sa'anat, one of the Unmade who has shown some indications of breaking Odium's hold. However, whether this occurs is yet to be shown. Furthermore, the powers of Bondsmiths are unique, broad, and to an extent quite complex, and to fully understand what they are capable of and what their role is within the greater structure of the orders will likely require a video in its own. To stretch a little further into speculation, it is not without reason to think that there could be more orders of radiance outside of the 10, since there are surge combinations to allow for it. For example, an order that uses the surges of adhesion and division, or gravitation and tension. But since the orders are fundamentally premised on the 10 Heralds, this would likely not occur within the story. But that's it for now, guys. I wasn't able to go into as much depth with the mechanics of surge binding, but I'll make that into a separate video. This video was simply meant to provide a top-down overview of the orders and a general understanding about what makes each Radiant order different. As usual, if you think I've missed something or you feel like expanding on what was touched upon in the video, feel free to leave a comment. Also, if you enjoyed this video, I'd really appreciate a like and a sub. I'm just starting out and have all sorts of video ideas to share with you guys. The lore is so rich and provides so much room for discussion, and I can't wait to dig into it. For now, have a good day, afternoon, or evening, and be well.